And good evening to each one of you. Good evening. We are going to get started with our presentation. And this is our chapter treasurers training. We are in our series tonight. We will be studying or looking at monthly reconciliations. I want to welcome you. I am Abani Anthony. I am the University Advancement Business Officer, and this PowerPoint presentation and this training is powered by the Powerhouse 6, the Office of Alumni Relations. All right, so for our agenda this evening, we will have a welcome and a housekeeping by our very own Teresa Davis. We will then go through chapter, roll call, reconciliation process, the internal controls, monthly budget updates, quarterly budget updates, and scholarship deadline update. We will then do questions and answers, and we'll take a look at the next 3 months of training. So I am going to welcome Teresa Davis to give you a warm welcome and to go over the housekeeping notes.
Good evening, Aggies. And of course, I'll greet you with my regular greeting with a hearty Aggie pride. I hope everyone is continuing to be safe and healthy and just living your life to the fullest like an Aggie does, right? So just a few housekeeping notes. Be sure to enter your name, chapter, and your chapter role in the chat feature, not the Q&A feature, but the chat feature. Also, throughout the presentation, please feel free to pose your questions using the Q&A feature. So we want to make sure that we keep the question and answer and the chat activity separate so that we can properly track any questions. And then also you have the opportunity to use the raise hand feature when we get to the actual Q&A. And at that point, if you had entered a question in the Q&A and we need a little bit more clarification, then you will be unmuted so that you can pose your question or provide any clarification there. And as a reminder, once we do that and you come on board, we ask you to state your name and chapter prior to asking a question. It is our pleasure to continue to bring you these series of treasurer training. We hope that you find them very helpful as they are intended to help you in your particular roles in your chapters. We have more to come, so stay tuned as far as other chapter engagement opportunities coming from the Office of Alumni Relations. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Avani. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And as we go through and do our chapter roll call, I would like to invite Crystal to see if she would like to give a warm welcome to our chapter treasurers and other officers on the call.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I too pray that you and your families are well. I want to say I appreciate all the work each of you do within your chapters in your local areas to keep alumni engaged with our illustrious institution, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Again, we appreciate all the work that you do. We cannot thank you enough for all that you do, and thank you for joining this evening. Thanks, Sabine.
Thank you, Crystal. So as you continue to add your name, your chapter role, as well as your chapter into the chat feature, I am going to ask that those that would like to participate, if you remember from last month, we had a little fun with poll everywhere. And so if you would like to participate, the instructions are on the screen. You can use your...
Bonnie, we're seeing your slide view. We're not seeing the individual slide.
That's not nice.
We're seeing multiple slides. And then also, I've just been informed, thank you everyone, that our chat feature is not enabled. So we have a little technical hiccup there. So everyone, going back, rewinding, go ahead and enter your chapter and chapter name and role in the Q&A feature until we're able to figure out what's happening with our chat queue. So sorry for the confusion, but thank you for your flexibility.
Okay, is that better? There we go. All right, so here are the instructions. Thank you, Teresa. I didn't realize, I'm looking at it, but it didn't dawn on me. So thank you very much. This is how we are going to join the poll everywhere. We have a polling question. We have two. And the first one is coming up, but if you would like to join by the web, you can, if you have a second screen, or you can open another window. The easiest way is to join by text message. So where you would normally put the phone number of the person that you want to text, you are going to type 37607. And where you would normally put your message that you want to text to someone, you're going to put A, Anthony 274. And then you're going to answer your question. So let's go ahead and go to the question. The question is, do you use accounting software? Now, I do realize that most of you do not, because you are a small organization and accounting softwares do cost. However, there are some that use accounting software such as QuickBooks, what is it called? Self-employed. It's just an easy little software in order to enter in transactions. So I just want to get a feel for who is using software, who is not using software. So we are going to, and it's optional to participate. So by all means, if you would like to, that would be great. If not, that's okay too. We're going to give you just another minute if anybody wants to participate. All right, so we're going to go straight to the next slide. So what we're talking about this training is the reconciliation. And the reason that the reconciliation is so important is because you want to make sure that you know every penny and where it's going. When we came together last month, we talked about the annual budget. The issue with the annual budget is it only works if you are putting in the data of the individual transactions so that you can see what categories are filling up, what categories are not. So last month you received an annual budget template allowing you to change the categories according to what you needed and allowing you to enter the amounts that you believe you were going to need for that particular category. So number one, your reconciliation process, we want to make sure that you ensure every charge on the bank statements are properly accounted and recorded. That means every check that you have written, as well as every deposit that is made, you have the documentation for it. Also, if the bank has charged you any fees, if you are doing any type of electronic banking, there are sometimes fees that are associated with that that don't match the fee schedule that the bank has issued. So you want to make sure if you have any fees that are outside of what you believe to be allowable, that you go and you reconcile those charges with the bank. And make sure you have some documentation as far as what those charges are. Even if it is just a piece of paper that you are writing on saying what that charge is, you are signing it, initialing it, and then one other person to be GAP compliant. I suggest the chapter president as you are reconciling the month. Next, you want to record any bank charges or interest that affect the cash balances. Again, that is not only the ACH charges, that is the interest that is coming on your savings account. If you have two different, a checking and a savings, that is also, this is where you're going to reconcile those charges when you have a bounce check, when you have any type of administrative fees. If you have to go back to your bank and you have to look for old bank statements, they will charge you for that. Those amounts are also on here. Investigate any charges with documentation. If you have any charges that you have to find, make sure that you have documentation of what it is, not only the charge itself, but what is the documentation that brought about that charge. If you have a check that was bounced and you now are paying that $5 fee, you need a copy of the check. You need a copy of the original paperwork that came with the check. So if the donor told you what they want that money to be for, you then have to go back and get that documentation, just so that you have everything documented. Lastly, you need to allocate each transaction so that the money is reflected on the budget in the proper category. If you have paid for stamps online and you paid through PayPal, then when you reconcile your PayPal statement, you need to make sure that the receipt that the U.S. Postal Service sent you that shows where that package went. I know when you do priority mail, they will send you not only the receipt that gets printed at the same time as the label, but they will also send you an email telling you the price that you paid. That price receipt then goes with the PayPal statement. Now, I will say to you also, if you have several platforms that you are using to receive money or to pay invoices, even if it's online, you should be reconciling those statements. You should have a PayPal reconciliation if you're using that with all the documentation. And PayPal is really good about issuing the statement and giving you a transactional report for each transaction. And then what you would do is whatever documentation you have to support that, you want to go ahead and put that with it as well. So if you're using PayPal, you need to have a PayPal statement. If you have however many bank accounts you have, you need to have bank account statements that are reconciled. You also need to have reconciliation even if you're using something like Cash App. Now, Cash App is different because it will not give you a statement. However, whichever phone you're using to use that Cash App, then you need to make sure you are writing the transactions and maybe put in an Excel spreadsheet. But if for any reason you are using a platform to collect or to pay money, you should have a separate reconciliation for that platform, even though the money from that platform might be going into your bank account. You want to show that you have reconciled the bank account as well as that monetary platform. And so what makes this process easier and what makes your job easier as you are reporting then to your chapter president as well as members, you want to keep clean bank statements to file. That means when you either get it in the mail or you download it online, there should be a clean bank statement that you put in your files. But as you're reconciling and you're checking off each item, that needs to be on a copy. And that can be put with your documentation. But a clean copy of the bank statements need to be in your file. The reason is because if for some reason you need to make a copy of it, you don't need all of those check marks. So please make sure that you keep a clean copy and then only keep clean bank statements and then use a copy for your check off of the transactions. Now, what I would do is I use a copy stamp that lets me know that this particular one is a copy, because sometimes the copy, especially if you print in color, it looks the same as the original. If you don't have a copy stamp, just write copy, that's fine. You need to file the check documentation together. So if you wrote 5 checks in the month, you need to have a copy of the check. You need to have all the documentation of what you paid. That gets filed together. Then you have to file your invoice documentation together. If you paid several invoices, you paid several bills, that needs to be grouped together. and then you have your reports together. So although in my office, I have more transactions probably than you all have, I have 3 separate file folders. I have a yellow one for my checks that I've written. I have a blue one for the payments that were, for the deposits that were made. And then I have a purple one for my reports. Now you don't have to get that extensive. You can have one file folder, but paperclip all the checks together, paperclip all the invoices, paperclip all the reports. The reason this is done is because later on, as you can see at the top of this slide, it says stay audit ready. At all times, you want to be able to go directly to your files, find what you're looking for, make copies of it if you need to. Initial final report and have chapter president off also initial. Again, this is a part of GAAP compliance. You want to make sure that you as the treasurer aren't reconciling the month, reconciling bank statements, and no one else knows what's going on. That way you can show in your documentation that you are being transparent, and you are also just keeping your chapter president abreast of what is going on. Highlight any charges that need to be investigated. So when you make a copy of the bank statement and you are going through and you are checking, and there seems to be a charge that you have to investigate, go ahead and highlight that. That will save you in the long run, because later on, if you ever have to go back, it's easier to find those charges that are highlighted. Label each file month and year for easy reporting. Also, when you get to the end of the fiscal year, you're trying to go through your files, making sure you know all of your reconciliations, all of your transactions. It's a lot easier for you if you file it. And like I said, you don't need the multiple colors like my files are, but if you have one file for July 2020, you should have 3 sets of paper clips. The reconciliations that you did, those are your reports. The invoices that you paid, and then also your third paper clip is going to be all of the checks, all of the deposits that you made. This all is to stay audit ready at all times, and anytime someone asks you for something, if you have a meeting coming up and you are asked to give an update on the finances, this process, these internal controls will make your life a lot easier. It seems easy just to say, well, that's not necessary, or I'll do it later, but the months pile up quickly. If you do it each month, it makes your job a lot easier, because I do realize that you all are volunteers. So I'm trying to give you the tools to make your job easier, and you're not using extenuated time in order to keep up with the finances of your chapter. Examine the annual budget each month for extremes. So let's say you're reconciling the bank statement and you realize that there was quite a bit of expenditures for, say, postage. For whatever reason, you had a lot to go out. So now what you want to do is at the end of the month, you want to total up those things, because you are going to allocate each of those transactions to what they are. And when you begin to look at the annual budget, you say, wow, we're already halfway through our budget and it's only September. So those type of things you want to keep an eye on, because if you get halfway through the fiscal year and you realize you have spent more in one category than another, that's where we were talking about last month, that you would make a decision with, of course, the support of your chapter president, that maybe what we need to do is pull money out of one category and put it in another. Now, that is not the ideal situation. You want to stay within your budget, but especially if this is the first year that you're doing a budget, you are going to make some adjustments. But if you make adjustments, please make sure you have it well documented, because when you go to make your budget next year, you want to make sure that you're making decisions based on the data that you're collecting now. So in the example I just gave, you use more of your postage than you normally would. Well, if that is going to be a regular occurrence, then you need to change your budget. If it was just something out of the blue that happened, you didn't expect it, you don't expect it to happen again, then you want to make notation about it because you don't need to increase your postage budget when you get to next year. So those are the type things that you want to pay attention to as you're reconciling each month, because the data that you are collecting is going into that annual budget so that you can begin to give the updates. So as we talked about, your monthly update. Now this is what I did is the annual budget that you received last month. I took that and I adapted it and I added the columns in it. You can see where July, August, September, October, November, and December have been added. That's the first 6 months of this fiscal year. And then the last one at the end is a total. And this spreadsheet will be sent when we send out the slides. And it's just an extra sheet on the one that you already have. So if you are new to this series or you weren't here last month, the chapter resource page that was in the email announcing this meeting, when you go to that link, you will find last month's presentation as well as an Excel spreadsheet for the annual budget template. And there will be a new link there after this meeting, and when you receive the slides, that has these additional columns. So as you, let's look at this. As you reconcile, and I like using this feature because it makes it so much easier. So as you reconcile your bank statement, you are going to look for, let's use the example of the dues. You are going to put how much you received in dues, whether it's unrestricted. Now we have without restricted, we have all of the dues in without restriction. If you have adapted your budget to where you want some of it to be in restricted, and that's up to you, then you would put it in either column. But what you were doing is when you reconcile for July, you were totaling all of the membership dues and you were putting it in July. And what happens is as you go through the months and you get to the end, it's going to total for you. And that way you can see at the end of this 6 months, where am I? In this example, we said that the $4,500 was going to be how much you received in the fiscal year for membership dues. So you're going to add each of these months, and then at the end of this particular spreadsheet that you're seeing in front of you is just the 6 months. Where are you? Are you halfway there? Are you just 25%? These are the things, the annual budget and these tools that we are discussing. This is giving you the tools you need in order to communicate your finances. Early on in this series, we talked about the difference between accounting and finances. Accounting is the transaction numerically. So you got membership dues for $4,500 for the fiscal year, but actually right now, let's say halfway through the year, you have $2,000. That numerical $2,000 is your accounting. However, your finances are descriptive. So your finances, when you are relaying information about your finances, you're not going to necessarily give that number of $2,000. You're going to say, we are almost 50%, and you're going to calculate it, whatever that is, you're almost 50% of your budgeting goal. Now, again, accounting is the numeric, finances is descriptive. Your descriptive finances is what you want to report to your membership, to your board, because that's how you're going to describe the health of your organization. How well are we doing in a particular program? You're going to describe that based on finances. So when we're looking at that program income here, and we're looking at registration, we say that $1,000 is coming in. That is going to be without restriction, $250 with restriction. As you begin to tell your chapter president or your members how you are doing, you would say, we are 50% towards our registration goal for this particular program. We are doing well or we're not doing well based on where we are in the program. So when you relay your finances, you're going to be descriptive. So this spreadsheet you will get, and this will really be a guide to help you in order for you to set up your own. Because if you took the template that I had last time and you changed the categories, that means you're going to have some different categories here. So if you left the lines the way that it is, you can just use this. Otherwise, you will insert these columns. And again, if you have any questions about this, if you need any help, you can definitely reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you. But this is a tool that will definitely aid you in describing and reporting where the chapter stands in their finances. So when you're talking about quarterly updates, now on a monthly basis, you are going to, the treasurer, are going to keep up with where those amounts are in the budget. However, I would suggest you do a quarterly budget update to where you are really just looking at this particular quarter, where you are in the budget. Now, there are going to be some things that are on budget. For example, you might be on budget for professional services and postage. However, you may have some categories that are over budget. That's the telephone website. That's the event catering, the meeting rental. You want to be able to see the project budget variances. Are there any variances that you need to worry about? Identify the trouble areas. If it is postage and you're already 50% into your postage and it's only the second month of the fiscal year, those would be trouble areas. And that's when you need to have a discussion with whoever is making that decision with the postage and find out, do we need to move money, or is this just an anomaly and you don't foresee any other problems going further in the fiscal year? Your budget is a guide for you. Also, you want to identify cash management impact. If you know that your postage has gone over budget significantly, but that same money you use for postage, you now have to use for that telephone and that website, now you have to identify the cash management impact. If that money is being used for postage that was meant for something else, what do we need to do? Is it going to cause us a problem? Do we have surplus that we can handle it? If we don't, we need to make some decisions. And that's where you as the treasurer, you would propose needed changes. Perhaps you need to move money from, now talking about the budget, perhaps you need to move money from one place, one category to another. As far as identifying cash management, you need to make a proposal as far as how you are going to pay the next due expense if there was too much money used in one category. So in our example, we're talking about postage. If you have used too much money in postage, what are your options so that you can make sure all of your upcoming expenditures are taken care of? That's really what you want to do. Now, this is a question, again, it's optional if you would like to use it, if you would like to do it, otherwise we can fast forward. But basically, this is just to get you thinking. What program is most predictable that you have? And predictable meaning, you know, every time that you go into that program, you know how much money is coming in. You know how much money is going out. It's very predictable. On the other hand, you have some programs, especially if you're starting a new program, you don't know yet. You don't know what to anticipate, how much participation you will get, how much income you will get, how many expenses you will come to, and you certainly don't know if you're using new vendors, what added cost you may have outside of the quote you might have gotten. Of course, you know that you can get a quote, and then once you go into dealing with a vendor, you may get something totally different, a different experience. So as I'm seeing, we don't have any responses. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Yes, we do. I have the annual gala. Wonderful. And why is that not showing? Sorry, my remote control lost this connection, so I apologize for that. The result that I saw is the annual gala. So I appreciate that answer. And because we've got a cloudy day, so I'm having some difficulty with my internet, so I apologize for that. However,
Bonnie, you have an answer in the chat, membership dues.
wonderful. Okay, most predictable, membership dues. And certainly that can be the case unless you have a great membership drive and you get some surprises, but membership dues, definitely. So your annual gala. So again, you have some things that are going to be predictable, but the use of the budget is so that you're going to project what it is you believe you're going to bring in with that program. But as you do the budget year after year, you'll begin to see data that will show you what you should expect and what you can expect. So let me go back to here just for a second. Like I was saying, the budget and the monthly reconciliations are there for a tool for you to be the most effective as the treasurer. As you are reporting to your chapter and you are reporting the project budget variances, you're also going to report all of your variances within your budget. You are the one that is taking a look at that data. So you are the one that has the bird's eye view, if I can say it that way, the bird's eye view of how well the project is going, how well the program is going, how well you're doing throughout the year. The reason why we want to do the quarterly budget is because if you're in the first quarter and you see that you have some major variances, you can make some changes in the second or third so that you can come out on the fourth as projected, if at all possible. Again, if this is your first year doing an annual budget, then you're going to have some difficulty being able to properly project. But as you do it, the more you do it, and you'll find that when you do your monthly reconciliations and you begin to write down where your money is going and you begin to see how each month it's building up, you'll become more comfortable with doing these budgets and you'll be able to give a more descriptive answer when people are asking you how things are going. Another advantage to the budget and the reconciliations is at the end of each project or at the end of each program, you can give a more detailed report of how the program went. Now, I did speak to one chapter president and we were talking about there are times that there are funds that are brought into the chapter directly to the chapter, and then there are times that someone may give funds to an officer. In those cases, that officer needs to make sure they are conveying everything to the treasurer, you are communicating what that is, and you are properly reconciling that. If you have a member for any reason, and I'm not advocating this, but if it is the case that you have officers that are receiving money, then I want you to treat that officer as a financial platform. And at the end of every month, there should be a reconciliation of all monies that came through that officer. Again, that is not me advocating that. That's me saying, if you have any means of receiving and paying money, each means that you use should have a reconciliation. And that's what makes this quarterly update more effective, because you are properly allocating each of those transactions so you can see where you are in the budget. So in terms of the budget, in terms of the reconciliations, that's the most important thing. The reconciliations are there for you to have full documentation. Now, when we get to the Q&A, we are going to open the floor up for any questions dealing with that. But at the end of this presentation, we are going to take a look at scholarship process updates. Now, to let you know, you have been told that when you have a change to your scholarship form, you need to send it to the P.O. Box. I wanted to make sure that you know that all mail from here on out needs to go to the Office of Alumni Relations at Alumni Foundation Event Center, 200 North Benbow Road. The P.O. Box is no longer open, and so we need all of the mail to come here. If you have sent something in the last 2 weeks, I will say, don't worry about it. The post office is holding that. We will get it. However, if you have not sent it yet, please send it to this address. Also, the deadline dates, and as it says at the top, bringing you the latest from financial aid. We wanted to meet with financial aid, make sure we were on track with what we were telling you for deadlines, what we were telling you for your fall deadline, your spring deadline. And so what we want to bring to your remembrance is the slides, the information that was presented some time ago as you were given information, and some of you are new, and so this is not your remembrance, this is something that you are learning for the first time. We changed environments. So where you see this yellow box, you see that the target process is now what we are going by. And you see that on number 1, it says select recipients by April 1st for the fall, and for the spring, October 1st. Now, I will tell you that as we have talked to financial aid, the way that most of you are doing it is perfectly fine. You are awarding at the beginning for both fall and spring. This is for those that for whatever reason you have to separate it. But you will see on number 4, this is where your dates are. You have April 30th for the fall, November 15th for the spring, but we have asked October 15th just to bring you up and give you 30 days of cushion. And then here you also have the address, 200 North Benbow Road, Suite 300.
And so one thing, I'm sorry, Bonnie, just to interject real quick, and I'm just seeing this as I did not make the update. The award form, which we need to change on number 2, is no longer the Alumni Association award form. So we will make sure everyone gets the revised award form with the proper mark up in the top corner of that award form, so you can list out your scholarship recipients and how much they receive. And then you will submit that award form along with any checks. If you are a chapter that manages your own scholarship account, that means you write the checks for the scholarship. Then just to reiterate what Bonnie was noting earlier, step number 4 is what you need to follow in order to mail those completed award forms and checks. And then number 2 will be corrected by the time this document is distributed to you all. Apologies for the confusion.
All right, and we definitely want to thank all of you as we are fine-tuning our processes and fine-tuning and getting you out information. I appreciate all of the emails as you are asking questions. That lets us know what information we need to get to you. As you can see on this slide, this also is the information that was provided previously so that you know what at that time, the new process was. Options for verifying whether grade criteria for scholarship renewal has been met. Chapter scholarship owner may contact the scholarship office to ask whether a student has met the grade criteria for the award renewal. The answer can be only yes or no.
So this is for those chapters in which you have a scholarship, and as Amani said earlier, if you award the entire scholarship at the beginning of the year, but you do have a checkpoint to say, hey, to make sure that your student is adhering to the GPA requirements in order for that scholarship to be renewed for the spring semester. So this is the process for that in terms of verifying grade criteria so that that scholarship award can be posted to that student's account for the spring, or based on your respective criteria, the scholarship award removed from that student's account if they do not meet the criteria.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so now we would like to open this up for questions. I believe we probably have some questions in the Q&A, but once we go through the questions in the Q&A, then that little hand raise thing, if you need to ask a question, we can definitely unmute you and get you to answer your question. But I'm going to ask Crystal if you will help out with any questions that are in the Q&A.
Sure. At this time, Amani, there are no questions in our Q&A section.
That means I did a good job. Yay! At least
So if anyone has any questions, let us know.
We'll say that anyway, right? But what this slide also has is the email address that you would use if you do have any questions. If there's any questions about anything that we have covered, not only in this training, but in previous trainings, we ask that you use alumni chapters at ncat.edu, and we will be sure to get those answers to you. And
We have one hand raised. I'm sorry, Amani.
Okay.
We got two hands that have been raised.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Chris.
That's okay. So we have Mr. Barnes. We'll allow you to speak, Mr. Barnes. You can ask your question. Just unmute yourself on your end.
I don't have a question.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we'll move to Tessie. You can ask your question. Just unmute yourself on your end.
Sorry, I was trying to order dinner. Okay, going back to fees with, I wanted to give you an update for Cash App. You can print a monthly statement in Cash App. It comes out, I believe, on the 5th of every month. But it's not as detailed as PayPal.
Okay.
But so with fees in PayPal, is that the way PayPal works? Somebody, let's say Judy submits $50 for dues through PayPal. Doesn't select friends and family, so PayPal charges a fee.
Yes.
Does that fee need to be reflected on our side, or is that fee reflected on the person submitted? So she pays $50, PayPal will deduct $1.75. We would only receive $48.25.
Okay, so there are two things that you need to make sure you're doing. You have to record the whole $50 that she gave you because she paid it.
Okay.
You then record the amount that you received, and then you put the $1.75 in the fees. So in membership, you would only put the $48.25, but in fees, you're going to put the $1.75. And the reason why is because even though all you received was the 48.25, you still have to recognize the full 50 that she paid.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So in your Excel spreadsheet, what you're looking at is you're putting the 48.75 in the income of membership, but then in the expenses, you have to put the $1.75.
The fees. So, okay. So then the statement would support the documentation because it's not a bank statement, right?
Correct.
So just by me printing the statement, that supports the documentation needed.
Right. So what you have in PayPal is you'll print your monthly PayPal statement, and then PayPal allows you to print a receipt for each transaction. So behind your
Okay.
PayPal statement, you're going to have each of the transaction receipts.
Okay. So print. Okay.
Now that's going to be good information for you, because if you get down to the end of the fiscal year, you want to be able to show in that fees how much you paid, because essentially you paid that $1.75.
Mhm.
You didn't receive it. You paid that $1.75. You want to be able to tell your finance committee or your board, this is how much we're paying. We might need to change the way that we collect our dues. So that's just more information for you.
Okay.
Okay, we have another hand raised. Jana Green. I will allow you to speak. You just need to unmute yourself on your end.
Hear me?
Yes.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I had a question around what gets communicated to the board versus what gets communicated to the general body. One member was saying to me a couple of months ago that we need to show the bank statement so that the members see where the money is going. Is that accurate?
That depends on the leadership in your chapter. That is determined by the leadership of your chapter, not the members of your chapter. In my experience, bank statements is much too detailed for the full body. That's why you have your monthly reconciliations and you have your budget updates, because all you need to do is show the categories and where you are in your budget. That should suffice to let the full body know where you are in the health of your chapter. Bank statements, number one, you don't want your full body to have your bank statements because your banking information is on there. You want to keep that confidential. The amount of information that you share with the full body is at the discretion of the leadership. And that's the best answer I can give you, because if for some reason your leadership wants to divulge that much information, I can't say that it's wrong. I wouldn't advise it, but it's not wrong. But what I would say is, if you are sharing information from a bank statement, please make sure that you are making a copy of it, blacking out any confidential information. And also remember, your bank statement is going to show copies of checks that you have written with your bank numbers on it. It's also going to show if someone made a direct deposit or if there was any kind of EFT payment to your account. It shows the name of the donor. That is not for the full body to know. There are some people that want to give money and they don't want everyone to know how much they gave. And so you want to make sure you keep that information confidential. And that's why I'm saying bank statements is just way too detailed. That really needs to stay within the leadership only. And you can give figures. You can give how much was spent in postage, how much was spent with professional services, but you don't want to give individual amounts and who paid it.
And in
So how about this?
addition to your leadership team, also your finance committee, because your finance committee is considered a subset of your body. And you know that should be the furthest that it goes. So just echoing what Bonnie said, but in addition to your leadership team, also maybe your finance committee can look at it if your chapter's protocols call for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a question in the Q&A section that says, so we don't have to give the monthly balance of our chapter's bank account when can we just give budget variances?
Again, that is going to be the decision of your leadership. Oftentimes what happens is you're giving bank account balances because you don't have a form of giving them the health of your organization. And so if you haven't done budgets before and you were just giving balances, you just want to introduce this new reporting system to the body. At the discretion of your leadership, if they feel like the budget variances will suffice for informing the body where you are, then by all means, just give the budget variances and not the bank account balances, because that can be misleading. You can tell someone, oh, we have $1,000 in the bank. Everyone thinks that's great, but they don't realize that you have a $500 bill coming up. So you have to be careful in what you share and not mislead anyone into thinking that you have more or less than you actually have. You as a chapter president, as the chapter treasurer, you have the full picture of where you stand financially. So you want to give a reporting that will accurately tell them the health of the organization, not just balances, because that could confuse the body.
There are no other questions or hands raised at this time. If anyone else has any questions, let us know.
All right, well, this has been wonderful. I see a hand or I don't see a hand. It's flashing, but.
There's a hand raised.
Okay.
One moment. Chiquita Mays. Do you still have a question? It went away. Chiquita, you're able to talk if you still have a question. You just have to unmute yourself.
Yes, I have a very quick question regarding the presentation from the scholarship training and whether or not that was going to be uploaded to the resource page.
Yes, so you will find on the resource page the June training, July, August, and after this, you will find September. You will also find the annual budget template. So if you look in, I believe we did the scholarships in July. So when you go to the resource page, you will find the presentation from July.
And also, Bonnie, I think what would be a good idea is the actual presentation from the webinar that was done a couple of years ago. That might be useful to some folks, especially if some folks on the call didn't attend the webinar that occurred in 2017, 2018, sometime around there.
All right, I'll definitely talk to Alana and we'll get that uploaded. All right, well, wonderful. So what we have to look forward to next month, October 21st, we are going to take a look at nonprofit income. And what we're going to go over is the type of income you are, just some ideas for you. Number one, ideas for you on how you can bring in money as a nonprofit, but also how you need to properly record that money. And so what we're doing is we're trying to build one thing on top of another. We started with the budget. Now we're moving to monthly reconciliations, and then we're going to talk about the nonprofit income and how the nonprofit income is going to be recorded as well as recognized in your financials, the overall financial health that you have. So I will say again, if you have any questions, if there's anything about nonprofit income that you would like to be covered, feel free to send us an email and we will try and get that information a part of the presentation. And when I talk about nonprofit income, we're talking about things like Amazon Smiles and, you know, the Network for Good that comes through Facebook, things of that nature. So if there's something that you have questions about, send us an email and we'll make it a part of the slide, the presentation.
There's another question that's been posed in the Q&A.
Okay.
Is it ever safe to send copies of checks via emails or messages received from members to members of the leadership team?
I do not advise it. Electronic copies, I do not advise it because anyone that has that at the bottom of the check is the account number. And if you've ever done an e-check, you know that you can use that account number in order to extract money from someone's account. So I do not advise it that you would attach a copy of a check to an email or any electronic process. If for some reason they need a copy of the check, they need to see your files. So when you have a meeting and you are together, let them see your files. But do not send copies of the check. It's the same thing that we ask that you not put any student's banner ID on any email or electronic sending, because that can kind of get lost in communication and you put that person in danger of having their information exploited. Any other questions? All right, well, I will just thank you very much for attending this training. The presentation will be uploaded to the resource page once it is complete, as well as a copy of the slides. The new budget update with the monthly reconciliation columns will also be there for you to use if you have used the same one that I had without adapting it. And we want to thank you so much from Teresa Davis, Alana Allen, Avani Anthony, Crystal Boyce, Patrice Buchanan, and Jeanette Evans, the Powerhouse Six. And I will give Teresa and Crystal an opportunity to give you farewell greetings.
One closing note, everyone, as was indicated in your in Abani's notification about this meeting, that you had the ability to sign up for the future webinars. We're having a change in technology-wise here at the university, and so those webinars will turn into Zoom meetings, regular Zoom meetings, so you'll be getting more information about that. So if you have already registered for a future webinar, we'll take note of that and make sure you get the new Zoom meeting invite. But thank you all so much for attending today. And before I say goodbye with my normal departure remarks, Crystal, did you have any words for the group?
Just thank you all for all that you do. Be looking out for more updates coming soon from us, and we'll keep you updated and your chapter presidents via email. If you have a change in officers or if anyone is added to your finance committees, please let us know so we can invite them to future trainings. Again, thank you all for all that you do.
Absolutely. And with that, I depart you with a hearty Aggie Pride.
Aggie Pride.
Aggie Pride.
Thank you. And you all have a great evening. See you next time.